1370 WOCA.
Ocala.
All right, 6 minutes after 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. I've been doing radio since 1984, and there were 3 years when I didn't do radio. And in those 3 years, I actually worked at an assisted living facility, and I was the activities director, so I didn't do anything health-related, but I did work with the folks who lived there all the time. One of the interesting things about that job was I would take people to the grocery store. And if you take somebody to the grocery store who needs a walker, and they are embarrassed to be seen using a walker, then you have to hold their hand until they get to a shopping cart. And this is something I recognized that they were doing, using shopping carts as walkers. And so it was so interesting. I would take people to the Publix or whatever, and they would say, well, just hold my hand until I get to the shopping cart and I'll be fine. So there was a certain level of embarrassment about using the walker or a cane or something of that sort. And the men had no problem. So two men holding hands walking across the park. They didn't have any problem with this, right? But they were ashamed or embarrassed to see the walker. The falling is such an important thing to recognize can happen. We actually had a lady who lived there, an older lady, and gosh, we fell in love with this lady. And then one day she was on the floor. Mm-hmm. And, we never saw her again. They took her away, and I guess she died shortly after that. And it was like, oh, my gosh. She was so beautiful and so sweet. We have in the studio Lauren Debick. Lauren brings us some really great guests, and looks like you did it again. Lauren, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Lauren, of course, the manager of marketing communications at Ocala Health. How are things over there?
Things are going very well.
Yeah.
How are things here?
Yeah, good. Good to see you. And now we're going to talk to Gina. How do you say your last name? Nashua?
It's Nashawat.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good
How
to
are
see you again.
Good to see you again as well. Thanks for having me back on.
And we're going to talk about falls, right?
We are.
And you've invited Dr. Garcia? Is
That's
that right?
correct.
Alex Garcia.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Alex. How are you,
morning.
doctor? The falling thing is something that what I just told you is my entire experience with falling, except for the fact that when my mother got older, she fell out of bed.
It happens.
I went there on a Sunday to take her to church, and she says, Larry, I'm on the floor. I said, you're on the floor? What happened? And she was lying next to the bed. She just waited like 3 hours, knowing that I was going to be there.
We see that often, that sometimes it's even days before an adult is found after a fall. The first question you asked me the last time I was on the show was, what is a trauma? And to recap for those who missed that show, a trauma is a very serious injury, an injury that is potentially life-threatening or disabling. So the reason why falls are serious is because oftentimes falls bring people into our trauma center. Mm-hmm. In fact, our number one mechanism of injury, so the number one case we see are falls. We see more falls than motor vehicle crashes in our trauma center. Yes.
And what is the demographic of those falling? Is it like, if I were to say older people, would you say that's not right at all?
Actually, falls do increase, or your risk for falls increase with age.
As you get older, okay.
When we look at our local data, we see that, we have about 28% of adults here in Marion County are 65 years and older. So when we compare that to our data in the trauma center, we see that over 70% of our falls are those adults 65 and older.
And why are they falling? I don't want to say why are we falling.
I want to emphasize,
that puts me into that group.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I don't want to be there yet.
I want to emphasize that falls are not a normal are not a normal process of aging. Just because we get older, our risk may increase, but the reasons, the risks why it increases is because, just naturally, we lose muscle as we age. This happens even if we're working out. It's just that's a natural process of aging. And if we don't keep up our muscle tone and our flexibility, when we're younger, it's easy to catch ourselves off a curb. when we get a little bit older, as our
Yeah.
muscle decreases, that can become harder to do.
I think shoes are a problem because I've seen a few more mature ladies at church, and then they are wearing these, little heels and things like that, and they're so unsteady on their feet.
Right.
So how do you counsel someone like that? Because you want to stay in fashion, but you don't. You're in denial.
Well, you're right. So flip-flops or shoes without a back, those are definitely, that will increase your risk for a fall, and heels will increase your risk for a fall. So it's really discussing with somebody, talking to them about what their risks are, and is it more important that we wear certain shoes or that we keep ourselves safe, because the consequences after a fall, especially as we age, can, like I said, be life-threatening. Or the one thing I want to emphasize is why fall prevention is so important to us at the trauma center at Ocala Health is oftentimes adults lose their independence after a fall. So they're living independently in their home, and then after a fall, they may be in rehab for months, and they may not be able to go back to their home independently, which is why you may have seen when you were working in assisted living facilities, you were seeing people fearful of falling, which is another risk for falling. If you fear falling, you stop doing those activities that put you at risk.
Yeah.
But what that does is it progresses the decline. Dr. Garcia, can you speak about some of the what you see in patients when they come for a fall in the trauma bay?
Absolutely. So thank you very much for having me, first of all. And to speak to that, falls can cause significant injury. And again, the older we get, the higher likelihood of an injury, because the ability to stop yourself also is decreased. Older folks are more likely to get hip fractures, bone quality, and so the number, 95% of folks that have a hip fracture are related to falls. But in geriatric folks, it's also the most common cause of a brain injury as well. So it's not an insignificant.
I was going to ask you about that.
The difference between a hip fracture and a brain injury seems huge, but both of them increase the morbidity and mortality of patients and their success of living independently. So you had someone, like you were saying in your story, that was an ALF, and they fell, and maybe they could never return to that assisted living, or maybe they ended up nursing homebound, or worse, they had a complication that further led them down a path of lack of independence. Now we have great medicines to treat a whole bunch of medical problems. Specifically, a lot of cardiovascular medications that are excellent at treating medical problems, but they also increase your risk of bleeding. So then you fall and you have these medications.
Oh, yes.
And then you bleed. And that bleeding, we have to take aggressive measures to reverse those things. And so it's a risk factor. Then you're not bleeding anymore, but your heart's not happy. And so it's a fine line that we have to balance, which is what we do there at Ocala Health at the Trauma Center. While our critical care surgeons take care of folks like this, because we have to balance both their acute injury as well as their chronic medical problems and find a balance so that we can try to get everybody back to their prior state of health.
Let me ask you to just hold on. We have to take a little break, and we'll be right back. If you have any questions, by the way, you're invited to call. The number is 622-9622. Lauren Debick is in the studio. Gina Nashut is in the studio. And Dr. Alejandro Garcia. We're talking about trauma and falls specifically. We would love to hear from you. We'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. Sunshine mixing with clouds on this Friday with a thunderstorm around during the afternoon and evening hours, the high 89 to 93. Then partly cloudy overnight Friday night, low 72 to 76. For Saturday and Sunday, sunshine mixing with clouds, a thunderstorm around during the afternoon hours of each day, the high both days 88 to 92. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
Looking to put your money to work? Florida Credit Union has a CD special, 25 months for 1.41% APY with a $10,000 minimum. Federally insured by the NCUA, a government agency. These rates effective through September 15th, subject to change at any time. Visit one of Florida Credit Union's convenient locations today or their website, flcu.org, or call 352-237-8222. Don't miss this 25-month CD special. Again, the APY is 1.41%. Act now. We all know the importance of good health, but we may not know the latest advances in medicine that are available to us. Monday at 9 a.m., Bern Paraiso will be our roving medical reporter to tell us about Seven Hill Gastroenterology PA and Dr. Reddy. We'll discuss screening, techniques, and more. So tune in and listen. This is more than news you can use. It's news that could save your life. That's Monday at 9:05 a.m.
Are you a list maker? Got your day planner laid out to structure your day? Well, here's something to add to your list. Make time for something really important. Visit Highland Memorial Park, because how you prepare for that moment is so important. Why Highland? Sure, it's a beautiful place, but aside from the beauty and the quiet reflection, practical people will appreciate the many options. Take a tour and make some serious plans. The Highland staff will confidentially show you all options and payment plans. Call today, 369-1020, Highland Memorial Park. Peace and reflection for your family.
Until you go into Automax, Marion County's #1 pre-owned dealer for over 15 years, and see their upfront pricing and how Automax puts their low outlet price, along with the Carfax and complete vehicle information on the window of every single vehicle. Then, and only then, can you take advantage of great finance offers, like rates from 2% with 0 down, and no payments for 90 days with loan approval. View all these great prices and vehicles on the corner of 17th and Easy Street. Automax, quality cars, outlet prices.
WWOCA,
All right, nice day. 18 minutes after 11 o'clock, and Gina Nishuat is in the studio. I didn't really properly even introduce you earlier, Gina. Gina is the Injury Prevention Coordinator for Trauma Services at Ocala Health, and Dr. Alex Garcia is in the studio. We're talking about preventing falling, and there's an event coming up. What'd you say? Wednesday. There's an event coming up, and of course, Lauren Debick is here, and you always bring us some great guests. So during the break, I mentioned to you that I know two cases. One, the lady who works here, one, my own brother, fell. Long story short, both of them hit their heads. Both of them thought they were okay. A few weeks later, both of them had signs like they were going through some kind of dementia, and turned out both of them had some fluid on the brain or something. Had to have holes drilled in their skulls to have it removed. They could have died in both cases had they not gone for help. So the message there is what?
If you hit your head hard enough that your bell gets rung, you probably should get checked out. And the older you are, that would be absolutely indicated. And if you take an aspirin for a headache or anything like that, that could cause your platelets not to work well, or in layman's term, a bit of increased bleeding risk, then get checked out, because those kinds of things can be monitored very closely. And sometimes we can decrease the expansion of that blood and or follow it so that you can get a care in an expedited fashion, so you don't have those consequences of altered mental status, as what you're describing, and something that was acute that accumulated over time, and then they got checked out and finally realized that there was an initial injury from that first fall.
Is that the only part of your body that you could fall and not realize? Like, could you break your hip and not realize it? Could you break your wrist and not realize it?
It would be harder not to realize those injuries, but I have seen people fall against tables and rupture their spleen and bleed.
Oh, really?
Break ribs, and it hurts a little bit, but I'm fine. And those ribs then progress to having created air that leaks out of your lung, and that can be life-threatening as well. The bleeding can be life-threatening. So the internal organs are the ones that you're going to be hidden from, right? You won't see those injuries without proper evaluation. The bones, although some people are super tough and can walk on a broken bone, most people will feel that.
They'll feel it, yes.
And I want to emphasize that most people after a fall, they may not feel dizzy, or they may not feel like they've hurt themselves, but it's really important to make sure. and go to the hospital and get that brain scan and make sure there's no internal bleeding, because oftentimes we feel fine, and it isn't until later on, or in fact sometimes till it's too late to treat, that patients go in.
This radio program obviously will help somebody somewhere, and this is what you do all the time, isn't it? I mean, you do presentations for people.
Yep, I visit different independent living facilities,
Yeah.
assisted living facilities. We do presentations on-site, off-site, providing community education. I partner with Strive Rehab. They offer free balance screenings, which is a fall risk factor. If your balance or your gait, so the way you walk, if that's compromised, that's going to increase your risk for fall. In fact, Strive will be at West Marion Community Hospital with Ocala Health and several other community partners, and that's the event that you were talking about.
That's the Wednesday event?
That's
Okay.
the Wednesday
Okay.
event. If you want to come talk to us about your risk for falling, we have free balance screenings by Strive. We have free vision screenings, hearing screenings. I'll be there. We have Elder Options, who's going to tell us more about matter of balance classes. It's an educational class to decrease the fear of falling. They're also going to be demonstrating Tai Chi, so Tai Chi demonstrations.
Oh, really?
So Tai Chi is a type of exercise that increases balance and body awareness, so that can decrease the risk for falling as well. There's going to be a lot of education and material, and that's from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. on September 14th at West Marion Community Hospital. And it's completely, again, free for the public.
Will people go into the main entrance of the hospital, or is this a special entrance for this?
So we'll have signs at the main entrance, but there's also an entrance on the side of the hospital where look for the event sign that will guide you to our event.
You know, I was just reminded of something, spoke to my brain. When my grandmother got up in age, she had a dog. And the dog was cute when it was a puppy, and it got too big. And she was walking the dog, and one of her neighbors, when I went over there one day, said, you know, your grandmother's going to fall one day walking that dog. The dog pulls too hard. It was the hardest thing to tell my grandmother, you got to let go of you can't keep the dog. The dog's going to hurt you. And we eventually convinced her. But I'm sure that's a story you hear all the time, right?
Well, we've seen also older adults trip over their cat. You know how cats like to be right by our
Yes.
feet, or small dogs. And
We call that stupid cat.
I
We say
encourage them to
stupid
put a bell on your dog so you're aware of
Yeah,
where
yeah.
the dog or the cat is, because sometimes we don't even realize that they're just waiting for us to, turn around, but we can't see them because they're so tiny. But I have also heard of older adults falling because their bigger dogs are pulling them.
Yeah, I would imagine there's probably a lot of that too, or the weekend warrior syndrome. Where you're out and you think you're ready to hike up a mountain, and next thing you know, you're falling off a cliff or something.
Well, other things older adults can do, and just anybody. So everyone's at risk for a fall. That risk increases as we get older, but unless you can fly or levitate, you're at risk for a fall.
I saw this guy on. Did you ever
The
see?
Dalai Lama or
Did you ever see
something.
Penn and Teller? You know Penn and Teller?
I haven't.
Oh, you know the magicians Penn and Teller? You know the Penn and Teller? No, nobody knows Penn and Teller. Well, anyway, so they have this magic show called Fool Us, because they're magicians. They want other magicians to fool them. And this guy was jumping rope and he was floating. And I said, oh my gosh, how does he do that? And they figured out, but they don't tell you.
Yeah.
I want to learn how to float.
Well, doctor, when someone comes in after an accident and you have to treat them for trauma, what is the first thing that you do to make sure you into the right area and that it's not referred from something else?
So we follow a regimented protocol called Advanced Trauma Life Support Resuscitation Measures, which is a step-by-step evaluation of a patient in an acute setting in order to not miss anything. And we do it the exact same way every single time, every single trauma surgeon, all my partners, in conjunction with the emergency medicine physicians as well. And those are particularly patients that meet trauma alert criteria, i.e., they're injured so bad that the paramedic recognizes them in the field as being injured. And
Oh,
so
really?
they call the hospital, say, we're taking someone that's sick, call a trauma alert. And so then our team, the trauma service team, the trauma surgeon and team, as well as the emergency medicine physician, the trauma nurses in the ER and multiple other staff, we all are there waiting for the patient to arrive to treat them expeditiously. Other times where we can be consulted at a later date is the patient comes in as a regular patient, they fell, and then the emergency department works them up and finds an injury, and then we take care of them as they go through the process. And so that's really what we do in that regard. In that, we can basically expedite transfusions and reversal of these anticoagulation agents that we were talking about that treat many medical problems very well. But again, once you get hurt and are bleeding, we have to stop them and turn them around and make you clot like you should. We can get folks to the operating room within 15 minutes of arrival, which is expeditious in order to treat a life-threatening bleed, be it intra-abdominally or intracranially, with expedition, right? So very quickly, so that we have the best outcome for the patient. And that's really what a trauma center provides you, is not only the expertise of knowing how to take care of injured patients, but the resources on the ground level to do it very, very, very quickly, and have a system in place that, regardless of which surgeon you plug into the system, which nurse, the system there is what takes care of the patients, on top of the expertise of the surgeons and everybody else. But that system kind of is your default backup. That's what makes people go through the process in a very regimented fashion so that everybody gets the highest quality of care.
Wow.
Jane, I don't know if this is a dumb question or not, but do you teach people how to fall? Like if I okay, it's happening, do I put my hands out? Do I hold them to my chest? Is there a good way to fall?
So that would be a great question for Strive Rehab. There are proper ways to fall. Most of the time when older adults fall, it happens so
So fast
quickly
they
that
don't-
that's not registering. It's really important that if you live alone, that you have either your cell phone or your portable phone or your life alert on you at all times, because you never know if you fall. We often see people get caught between their bed and their nightstand, or the sink and the toilet, or in the
That would be
bathtub.
embarrassing, wouldn't it?
So grab bars are really important.
What are?
Grab bars in
grab
the
bars, yeah,
bathroom. Loose rugs, I'm often telling people to
Yes.
fasten those tightly, especially the corners, to the ground. Or get rid of them altogether. Give them to your kids or your friends at work or church or wherever you are, because I speak to people weekly in the hospital, and I said, "How did you get here?" And they tripped over a rug.
Oh.
You know what? That's something I would end up doing.
Well, everybody does. 80% of falls
It's me. I'm
happen
going to
in the
trip over a
home.
rug or a
They
stupid
happen
cat.
inside our home doing things we normally always do.
Will you have the Life Alert person at your event on Wednesday too?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get Life Alert at this event, but we'll have information. If you want to get in touch with Life Alert, we'll have information
I would
for you.
absolutely recommend Life Alert. That is
Absolutely.
an outstanding program. Yes, and can they call you, Lauren, to find out about the event or about Life Alert? You guys give that information?
Absolutely. They can call our health hotline for information about that, about the event, directions, location, any questions they have. If they have any medical questions whatsoever, there are registered nurses on staff 24/7, and the number for that is 1-800-530-1188.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend calling it. That was another lifesaver for my mom. She had that thing, which, by the way, the day she fell out of bed, she didn't use it because she knew I was going to be there in 3 hours. I said, why didn't you got that button? You could have called. They would have heard you, So
And Gina, you have a number that they could call you at if you want to do speaking at Rotary clubs or things
Absolutely.
like that?
So I do community education, and again, I partner with Strive Rehab. They offer free balance screening, so we often collaborate, and I'll do some education. They'll do your balance screening for free. But if you're an assisted living facility or an independent living facility, or I even go to churches, and because there's a lot of older adults there. If you want to collaborate with the trauma center and our injury prevention program, you can call me at 352-401-1043.
Okay.
And you can email me at gina.nesheWat@hcahealthcare.com.
Gina, thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Garcia, thank you for coming in. And Lauren,
for having us.
thank you as always. All right, if you need any of that repeated, call us. We'll be glad to do that. And share the video that we just made with somebody who will benefit from the information. Don't fall. And hold the hand of that guy who's offering it to you, because you won't fall.
Absolutely.
Or use the shopping cart. I always thought the shopping cart was going to go out. You know what I mean? It would get away from them. It was crazy. All right. It was more than I thought it was going to be. All right. We will take a little break. Thank you all. We will
Thank
be
you.
right back. This is WOCA
Thank you.
Ocala.
Hey, produce farmers, listen up. You know me. It's Nathan the Nematode, and I'm your biggest problem. That's because me and millions of my little friends are below ground right now, getting ready to feast on the roots of your crops. And we know you're having a hard time stopping us. So while you're searching for solutions, we're gorging on the season's harvest and
At approximately 4:25 p.m. today, Nathan the Nematode and millions of fellow nematodes were pronounced dead thanks to Magistine, a powerful yet worker-friendly bionematicide. Apply Magistine pre-plant or every 3 to 4 weeks right up to harvest to improve your crop. Magistine controls yield-robbing nematodes in soil pests to deliver stronger, healthier roots and robust yields. The effective, worker-friendly, and sustainable Magistine just might be a lifeline for your crops. Goodbye, nematodes. Hello, Magistine. Get yours today. Visit goodbyenematodes.com or call your local supplier. That's goodbyenematodes.com.
Here are today's headlines from The Source, WOCA. A nationwide prison strike planned for today has Florida's jails and state prisons on high alert through the weekend, bracing for possible upheavals by inmates protesting what they say is inhumane and violent treatment. Already, a revolt at Holmes Correctional in Florida's Panhandle Wednesday night, involving more than 400 inmates, caused damage to nearly every dorm during an uprising that lasted into the early morning. No one was seriously injured, but the department is concerned that the disturbance might be a harbinger of what's to come. Florida's prison system, the third largest in the country, has been dangerously understaffed for nearly a year, and several sieges have occurred in recent weeks. To further exacerbate tensions, many inmates have been in forced confinement in their dorms, allowed out only to eat because there is not enough staff to guard them during outside recreation. In recent weeks, the department has had disturbances at Jackson Correctional, Gulf Correctional, Franklin Correctional, and Okaloosa Correctional. All of them, like Holmes, are located in Region 1 in the Panhandle, and a corrections officer was stabbed during a melee at Columbia Correctional in April. The loosely organized national strike, a grassroots effort, comes on the 45th anniversary of the prison riots at Attica, the 1971 prison siege near Buffalo, New York, considered the largest prison rebellion in U.S. history. People are furious after pictures of a Florida Walmart's 9/11-themed Coke display began to circulate on Twitter Tuesday afternoon. Twitter user Sean Richard tweeted a picture of the display, which presented Coke Zero stacked in 2 columns to resemble the World Trade Center's Twin Towers that were destroyed by terrorists 15 years ago this Sunday. The display also utilizes the placement of other Coke products to replicate the image of the American flag. The display is then topped with a banner that states, "We will never forget." The photo spurred thousands of angry retweets about the beverage company's marketing ploy. Orlando Weekly reports the display has been taken down and that Walmart initially approved the design. An Ocala Boy Scout was scammed with a counterfeit $100 bill about a week ago. The 12-year-old scout was selling snacks as a fundraiser for his Boy Scout troop at an Ocala Walmart 1 week ago when someone made a purchase with a fake $100 bill. The young man then gave the man change in real money. Upon discovering the bill was counterfeit, the boy and his father decided that they would continue their efforts in spite of the disappointment and set up their fundraising table at the same Walmart the next Sunday. Their story had made the rounds, and another man who wished to remain anonymous gifted the scout with a real $100 bill in an envelope to make up for his financial setback. Sharing the story was not about the money for the young scout. He said it was about getting a message out there that could save a potential victim. The Marion County Sheriff's Office is investigating the incident. The boy's parents said they plan to give the donated money to the North Florida Council of Boy Scouts in Jacksonville to help out other Boy Scouts. The name of the Boy Scout, his father, and the specific Walmart store are intentionally left out of this story because it was not clear if those involved wanted to be identified. And thousands of Floridians enrolled in the ITT Technical Institute are wondering what's next after their college closed its doors without warning. They can't finish their degrees at ITT Technical Institute, and there aren't many colleges that will accept their credits if they transfer. Tallahassee nursing student Nicole LaFale says, "I am the victim of fraud because I was wrongfully deceived," unquote. More than 40,000 students and 8,000 staff nationwide were affected by the closing of the private for-profit college. ITT shut down amid fraud charges and an investigation